Welcome back to the deep dive. This week is pretty intense stuff you guys sent in. I gotta say, we've got conflict and climate action,
Oh,
some
yeah.
serious AI development,
Yeah, definitely.
and
It's a lot.
humanitarian crises. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but that's what
Yeah,
we do here.
exactly. So, where do we even begin?
Well, the thing is, all these issues, they're all kind of interconnected, and we'll see that as we go. Like, we'll look at how a conflict on one side of the world can impact the supply chain of something like electric vehicles. I mean, you're probably driving one right now.
Right.
Or how a new technology in healthcare could change things across continents.
It's amazing to think about. Okay, so let's dive in. What do you say? We start with what's going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo. You know,
The DRC?
with DRC, right?
Okay, so the M23 rebel group in the east of the country, they're really ramping up their offensive. They've been around for years now, and they say they're fighting for the rights of a specific ethnic group.
Right.
They've also been accused of some pretty terrible things, like human rights abuses and exploiting the region's mineral wealth. It's complicated. Like, there's a whole lot of history there.
For sure.
But what we're seeing now is a surge in violence, and get this, the UNHCR is reporting that over 120,000 people have been displaced in just the last 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. 120,000 people in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That is, that's just devastating. And on top of that, the DRC is already dealing with the world's largest displacement crisis.
Exactly. Just adding to a really heartbreaking situation. And then to make matters even more complex, Rwanda is being accused of supporting these M23 rebels.
Really?
Yeah. So you can see how what might seem like a regional conflict can actually have much wider global implications.
Absolutely. And it's not just geopolitical either. There's a tech angle here that affects us all. I was reading something about how the DRC is really important for the global tech industry.
Oh, yeah. It is. Like, did you know that the DRC is responsible for producing over 60% of the world's cobalt?
60%.
Wow.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and cobalt is what we need for those batteries in our phones.
Oh, right. And electric vehicles, too.
Exactly. So this conflict, it could actually disrupt the supply chains of all that technology, which would mean we'd have to wait longer for new phones, prices would go up, and it could even slow down the move to electric vehicles.
Wow, that's a little scary. It really shows how fragile our tech-driven world can be.
It does.
Okay, so we've got conflict in the DRC with global implications. But let's switch gears for a minute and talk about something more positive. What's going on in the world of renewable energy?
Well, Kenya's doing something really interesting. They're calling it the Green Horizons Project, and they're planning to have the biggest solar farm in the whole of Africa by 2030.
Whoa, the largest in Africa. That's pretty ambitious. What kind of impact are we talking about here?
Oh, it's huge. They're projecting that it'll power over 12 million homes, and it'll cut carbon emissions across the whole region by 15%.
That's incredible. That's a massive contribution to fighting climate change. And I bet this will have a big impact on Kenya's economy too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're expecting it to create something like 60,000 jobs in construction, maintenance, operation, all that.
Wow. Sounds like a win-win for the environment and the Kenyan people.
But are there any concerns about a project this big? Anything we should be keeping an eye on?
You know, there are some activists who are raising some really important points about making sure the development is inclusive.
Okay.
So basically, they want to make sure that everyone benefits from this project, especially when it comes to access to electricity. They want to make sure that it reaches even the most remote and underserved communities in Kenya.
That makes sense. You don't want anyone to be left behind. It's really great to see Africa leading the way in tackling climate change. Like, this is a big deal.
It is.
So we've talked about conflict and renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
What about the world of technology and healthcare? Any exciting developments in AI?
Oh, there are always new things happening in AI. It's such a fast-moving field. But one that really caught my eye is this new platform called MetaSense.
MetaSense. Okay.
Yeah.
What's so special about it? Well, imagine a platform that can analyze medical data incredibly fast, like faster than any human, and with amazing accuracy.
Okay, that sounds a little like science fiction. Is it actually being used right now?
It is. They're doing pilot projects in a bunch of different places, especially in areas where access to specialized healthcare is limited. So they're running trials in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, and it's looking really promising.
That's great. What kind of results are they getting?
Well, for example, in India, they used MetaSense to diagnose tuberculosis cases,
Oh, wow.
and it was able to diagnose them with 98% accuracy,
Mm.
which is amazing. But what's even more impressive is that it was so much faster than traditional methods.
How much faster are we talking?
Well, usually a TB diagnosis can take weeks, but with MetaSense, it was cut down to just hours.
Wow, from weeks to hours. That's a game changer. especially for a disease like TB. Early and accurate diagnosis is so important for treatment and to stop it from spreading.
Exactly. And this is just one example of how AI is being used in healthcare. There's potential for it to transform so many things like personalized medicine, drug discovery, even predictive healthcare.
Wait, so instead of just reacting to illnesses, we could use AI to predict health issues and prevent them altogether.
That's the idea. Like imagine AI analyzing your genes, your lifestyle and environmental factors, and being able to predict potential health risks years in advance.
That's incredible. But I mean, I can also see how that could raise a lot of questions about privacy and data security.
Oh, absolutely. And policymakers are starting to think about what guidelines are needed for using AI in healthcare. The whole new
Or-
frontier in figuring out how to encourage innovation while also protecting patient privacy. It's a tough challenge.
For sure. It sounds like we're just at the beginning of figuring out how to use this technology responsibly. AI has so much potential to transform healthcare, especially for people who don't have easy access to doctors. But there are still a lot of things to figure out. Okay, so we've talked about some pretty positive developments, but now let's shift our focus to a region that's facing some really serious challenges. What's the latest on Yemen?
Well, Yemen is going into its 10th year of conflict.
4 years.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. And the UN is reporting that a staggering 80% of the population needs humanitarian assistance. Millions of people have been displaced. It's a dire situation.
That's just heartbreaking to hear. It's hard to even imagine what people are going through there. What's being done to help?
Well, the UN has issued an emergency appeal for $4.5 billion in funding to try to address the crisis.
4.5 billion.
Yeah, but, even when there is a will to help, getting the aid to where it's needed is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Funding shortages are a huge problem for aid organizations.
It's a shame that even when people want to help, it's so hard to actually get the resources to the people who need them most.
It is. And it's not just funding. Access to conflict zones is another major obstacle. It's incredibly dangerous for aid workers to get to the people who need help the most.
Yeah, I can imagine. But even with all these challenges, there must be some signs of hope, some positive developments, right?
Oh, there are definitely people doing amazing work. There are these mobile health clinics in a city called Al Hudaida,
Okay.
and they're using a new therapeutic food blend to try to combat malnutrition. And you know what? They're actually seeing a real impact. They're saving lives.
That's so inspiring to hear. It's amazing how people can come up with creative and effective solutions even in the face of such a complex crisis.
It is.
It seems like there's still a long road ahead for Yemen, though. Where do you think things stand right now?
Well, there are no easy answers here. This situation is just incredibly complex. But what's clear is that the international community has to step up its efforts. We need to support Yemen more. We need to push for a peaceful resolution to this conflict.
Absolutely. Staying informed and engaged with what's happening in Yemen, it's crucial, even though it might feel far away from our own lives. Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to go back to something you mentioned at the very beginning about how all these events are interconnected.
Yeah, it's striking, isn't it? What happens in one part of the world can really have ripple effects that are felt across the globe.
Totally. And I think the DRC conflict is a perfect example of that. A conflict in Central Africa could disrupt the supply chains for technology that millions of people all over the world depend on.
It really shows how connected we all are in ways that we might not even realize.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about. We've covered a lot of ground already, so I think this is a good place to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our exploration of these global events and talk about what they mean for all of us.
Welcome back. It's amazing when you think about it, how these events are shaping the world, not just right now, but what it all means for the future.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking. And speaking of the future, let's go back to that AI platform we were talking about, Medicines. That thing sounds like it could totally change the game, especially in parts of the world where healthcare is hard to come by.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not even just about diagnosing diseases, There's so much potential for AI to revolutionize how we approach medicine altogether. Personalized treatments, drug discovery, even predicting health issues before they happen.
So we could move from just treating people when they're sick to actually preventing them from getting sick in the first place.
Exactly.
Right.
Imagine AI analyzing your genes, your lifestyle, all the stuff that impacts your health, and then being able to tell you years in advance what you might need to watch out for. It could even suggest ways to prevent those problems from ever happening, personalized just for you.
That sounds pretty futuristic, but I guess that's the direction we're heading in.
It is, and it brings up some really big questions too, like how do we make sure everyone has access to these advancements? We don't want it to be something that only benefits people in wealthy countries or people who can afford the latest technology.
That's a really good point. We can't get so caught up in the excitement of new technology that we forget about making sure everyone benefits.
Yeah, it's a constant challenge, right? How do we keep innovating, but do it in a way that benefits all of humanity? We don't want technology to control us, you know?
Right. We want to use it to make things better for everyone. This reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, that idea of interconnectedness.
Oh, yeah.
Like how a conflict in the DRC could disrupt the supply chains for all sorts of things. But that interconnectedness, it's not just about physical stuff, right?
No way. It's about the flow of information and ideas, too.
Yeah.
Even cultural trends. Everything is so global now.
And social media plays a huge role in that too, right? It's how we amplify voices, organize movements, connect with people all over the world.
It's an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah.
But of course, there's a downside, too.
Yeah.
Social media can also be used to spread misinformation and make existing divisions even worse.
Like what we were saying about the DRC.
Yeah, exactly. The conflict there is a prime example of how misinformation can fuel tensions and make it even harder to find peaceful solutions.
It makes you realize how important it is to be really careful about the information we consume, especially online.
Couldn't agree more. We have to be critical thinkers, question what we see, look for evidence, and always consider the source. Before we go too deep into that, though, maybe we should get back to some of those positive stories we were talking about earlier.
Okay, yeah. Good idea. What about Kenya's solar farm project?
Oh, the Green Horizons Project.
Yeah.
That's such a great example of how countries are actually taking steps towards a more sustainable future. It's a massive project, but the potential benefits are huge.
And it's not just about cutting down on carbon emissions either. This project could really change people's lives in Kenya and even beyond.
For sure, access to reliable and affordable energy, it can be a game changer for economic development, education, healthcare, all of that.
It's about breaking those cycles of poverty and creating opportunities for people to thrive.
Exactly. And it also sends a powerful message to the rest of the world. Africa isn't just a continent struggling with problems. They're leading the way in innovation and solutions. They're taking charge of their own future.
That's an important reminder that progress is happening all around us, even in the midst of all the conflict and crises. There are people working hard to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the strength and resilience of the people on the ground. They're not just passive victims. They're actively shaping their own destinies.
I like that way of looking at things. And speaking of shaping destinies, let's talk about how the media portrays all these global events.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
What we see and hear in the news, it shapes how we understand the world, right?
Definitely. The way these stories are framed, they can influence public opinion and even impact policy decisions.
Yeah.
They can affect how we see other cultures and countries.
Right. Like a lot of times when we hear about Africa, it's in the context of poverty or conflict or disease.
Right.
But that's only one part of the story. There's so much more to Africa than that. It's a huge continent with diverse cultures and economies and so much innovation happening all the time.
Exactly. It's important to show the whole picture. The achievements, the potential, the diversity of experiences.
It's about challenging those simplified narratives that we often hear.
And it's not just about Africa either. It's about questioning any narrative that reduces complex issues down to simple stereotypes.
Yeah, we need to be seeking out different perspectives, amplifying voices that are often ignored, and trying to build a more nuanced understanding of the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And I think that's something we try to do here on the Deep Dive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want our listeners to think critically, question what they hear, and have those important conversations.
So before we move on, I want to circle back to that idea of interconnectedness one more time.
Oh, yeah. It's the theme that keeps coming up.
It really ties everything together, all the conflict, the humanitarian crises, the technological innovations, climate change. It's all connected.
And it's not just about understanding those connections. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web.
Our choices matter. Our actions matter. Even our inaction can have ripple effects that we might not even be aware of.
It's a call to action. Be informed, be engaged. Use your voice to make a difference in the world.
Whether it's through the choices we make as consumers or the organizations we support or the way we interact with our communities, we all have the power to make a positive impact.
And even when things seem really tough, even when we're faced with these huge challenges, there's always hope. There's always the possibility for positive change.
That's such a powerful message. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our conversation, but I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder.
Oh, I like this. What are you thinking?
Well, we talked about how AI could revolutionize healthcare. But what about other global challenges? Could AI be used to address things like climate change or poverty or education?
That's a great question. We've already seen some promising applications of AI in those areas, like climate modeling, disaster response, even poverty alleviation. But it's crucial that we move forward carefully and thoughtfully.
Right. What are some of the potential pitfalls we need to watch out for? How do we make sure AI is being used ethically and responsibly to address these challenges? How do we make sure everyone benefits?
These are the kinds of questions we need to be asking ourselves. And they're not just questions for scientists and policymakers. Everyone needs to be a part of this conversation.
Exactly. So we encourage all of you listening to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep engaging with these issues. The future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.
You never know, maybe your own deep dive into these global issues will spark a new passion or a new idea or even a new solution to one of the challenges we're facing.
So until next time, keep diving deep and keep looking for those moments of insight and inspiration that remind us of the amazing potential that lies within each and every one of us.
The world is full of wonders just waiting to be discovered.
All right, we're back for our final deep dive into everything we've been talking about today.
Yeah, lots to cover still.
It has been quite the journey, from conflict to AI to climate change. It's a lot to process.
It really is. But I think that's what makes it so fascinating, you know, seeing how everything's connected.
Exactly. So let's recap a bit. We started with the DRC and that conflict with the M23 rebels.
Right. And it's causing so much suffering, over 120,000 people displaced in just 2 weeks. It's just adding to an already awful situation.
Yeah, and like we were talking about before, this conflict could have ripple effects that go way beyond the DRC.
Oh, definitely. Remember, the DRC is a major supplier of cobalt.
Yeah.
And that's a crucial ingredient in so many of the things we use every day, like our smartphones, laptops, electric cars. If that supply chain gets disrupted, it's going to affect all of us. We could see prices going up, longer wait times for new devices, and it might even slow down the transition to electric vehicles.
It's kind of a wake-up call, isn't it? It shows how connected we all are, even when things seem really far away. But hey, even with all the bad stuff, we talked about some pretty hopeful things too, right?
We did. Like Kenya's Green Horizons project, I mean, that's a massive undertaking, but the potential is just incredible. Yeah.
Clean energy for millions of homes, a boost to the economy, and a major step forward in fighting climate change. It's impressive.
It really is. And then there's AI. I still can't get over that medicines platform.
I know, right? Diagnosing tuberculosis in hours instead of weeks? It could totally revolutionize healthcare.
Especially for communities that don't have easy access to doctors. But like we discussed, we've got to be careful with AI too. We need to make sure it's used responsibly and ethically, that it benefits everyone, and that we protect people's privacy.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool, but we have to be thoughtful about how we use it. So we talked about the DRC, Kenya AI, and then there's Yemen, a country that's been torn apart by conflict for a decade.
It's hard to fathom the suffering people are going through there. But even in those circumstances, you see incredible resilience and compassion, the mobile health clinics fighting malnutrition, the aid workers risking their lives to help people. It's inspiring.
It really is. And it's a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's always hope, and there's always something we can do to make a difference.
Exactly. We can't forget about Yemen. We need to keep pushing for peace and support the people who are struggling there.
So, we've covered a lot of heavy stuff today, but one of the biggest takeaways for me is how interconnected everything is. What happens in one part of the world really does affect us all.
It's a web,
Yeah.
and we're all part of it.
And that means we have a responsibility to stay informed, to engage with these issues, to try to understand them, and to figure out how we can make a positive impact.
Whether it's through our own choices, the organizations we support, the conversations we have, it all adds up.
So everyone listening out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the issues that matter to you.
The world is full of complexities and challenges, but it's also full of beauty and potential for positive change.
And who knows, maybe your own deep dive will lead you to a new passion, a new insight, or even a new solution. And that's what the deep dive is all about.
So until next time, happy diving, everyone.
Happy dive.